In an arena-based roguelike, what is a game other than a collection of enemies? Since the last devlog, I spent the majority of my time on implementing a few interesting enemies, as the game was just stale with basic enemies. Yo, let me introduce myself. I'm Spike Studio, and I'm working on a short arena-based roguelike game, which I know is quite an innovative topic, that is not seen anywhere else. So I'm working with this talented artist I met in a Discord server, and so far we've made pretty decent progress up to this point. So let's get into it. The first enemy I added was this boulder right here, which is definitely not inspired by Mario's stomps. Looking at the design, the attack pattern came to me right away. This boulder right here is going to rise into the air, move towards the player, and then slam down. I know, that's pretty creative, isn't it? Upon slamming down, 4 projectiles will launch out in a plus-size pattern. So within this enemy system, I wanted to create variation without having to make a ton of new enemies. So I decided to add an elite enemy system. To start, I added a small icon above the enemy, as you can see here. To make the enemy stand out a bit more, I scaled it up by 50%, making it even more intimidating to the player. These elite enemies will gain special properties, allowing for more enemy types from the same base enemy. This includes different attacks and even abilities. Going off of this, I went into the elite boulder, which I started with more health and it attacks faster. This change already made the enemy much more threatening, but I wanted to go further. To do this, I added 4 more projectiles, having the elite boulder slam down into a barrage of 8 in total. These projectiles are also faster than the basic boulder, giving a small range boost in return. Seeing this elite boulder enemy already makes it much more threatening than having a gang of small boulders. The next enemy was the mushroom, which I already had a base version of from the start of the project. I wanted to revamp this mushroom to use projectiles, since my old system it was not. To do this, I looked into short range attacks. The most obvious answer was a shotgun attack, as all roguelikes are 100% required to include this. This mushroom will go underground and then it'll pop up near the player before firing off a few of these projectiles. The elite version was quite a simple change as well. I just added more projectiles that moved a bit faster, which allowed them to go further. This makes it quite annoying to deal with if the player starts to get surrounded in a huge wave of enemies. Up next, I added in a wooden knight, which was the basic enemy that will not be too threatening to the player. The knight will simply run at the player, knowing full well it's about to get lit up by the player's attacks. But honestly, it's fine with this fate. The knight may also use a shield to delay this, but overall, it's not too threatening of an enemy. The elite version runs quite a bit faster and continues to use this shield, but it's still just the basic enemy. The biggest difference with the elite version is that the shield will also heal the knight when it's hit, and this forces the player to stop shooting at some moment. These enemies are already quite simple, so I may end up revisiting them to give them a sort of attack in the future. The last enemy I added was this floating horned devil thing. I reused the shield that the wooden knight already had, but this shield would not only block the projectiles. I wanted the arena to have more projectiles flying around. Since up to this point I added 3 enemies and none of them really fired any projectiles. To fix this issue of not enough projectiles, I made it not shoot projectiles. Instead, the shield, it's going to reflect the player's projectiles back. This can get very scary when fast firing weapons or skills are used, such as a machine gun type weapon. Watching tons of bullets come flying back at your face, it's pretty threatening. The elite version is the same, but I couldn't think of any variation, so honestly I'm definitely going to revisit this in the future. These 4 enemies already made the game feel a lot more alive, and allowed me to implement basic gameplay loops so I can start testing the game. Although I still have a ways to go when it comes to a variation of enemy types. Apart from this, I already talked with my artist about the design we will go for the rest of the game, so we both have an idea of what needs to be implemented next. Next devlog, you may see these features added, so be sure to subscribe and like to see what these exciting plans are. See ya!